Just fucking do it. Subscribe now. Two are live. Gerard, the gangster lawyer, who now is rolling up veterinary practices, veterinary hospitals, and where you take your dog and cat to get a bath and shit. Anyway, those. And some of the things that you're going to roll up, you're going to find out, much to your chagrin, that you didn't get, in your mind, in the right vertical. And somebody here yesterday asked me, what if I started in this and then I saw I didn't like it and then I wanted to go? Was it you? Yeah. I should have known it was you. Anyway. And it's not worth the consternation to switch. After you have 15 or 20 of them, then you can pick up the additional. But more importantly, you'll find out that you don't like them. You don't like what you're doing. That happens more often. Once, the lust of having sex 15 times a day wears off, they think, fuck, how long can I do this? And some people, my advice is to stick to it and exit at some point down, because I know what happens. I know what happens. Number one, your board loses confidence. You sucker punched us. And now we're going from crematoriums to assisted living. Well, actually, crematoriums and funeral parlors and cemeteries are at the bottom end of the healthcare continuum. And arguably, veterinary practices and stuff like that are also, but that's not human healthcare. My advice is to stick it out, learn to like it. It's like I knew a guy in college. He said, even the worst piece of ass I ever had was terrific. So even the deal that you don't like is better than no deal, is what I'm trying to say. Saw Steve last night, if I remember correctly. Just like you. Didn't it remind you of yourself? Cutthroat motherfucker. I forget which one we gave you, but there's 2 or 3 films. One of which, and every film about anybody, whether it's JFK, the longer you're dead, the worse they are. In other words, telling the real shit about you. We didn't learn that Adolf Hitler got off on people shitting on him until probably the 80s. That was a sexual experience for him. Maybe they should have kept it a little longer from telling us that even beyond the 80s. So what are the takeoffs or takeaways from Mr. Jobs? Yes, sir.
Steve didn't know about the details. He said he's the conductor of the orchestra.
Now, he's the second one that said that. In fact, I'll put it another way. I don't know, but a handful, not of the icons, but a handful of the guys that you know their names that understand the details. Elon, because of his engineering background, he knows a lot about the details. But the rest of the guys don't. They just don't. Another thing that comes to mind when I think of Steve Jobs, which I met before, is don't confuse me with the facts. He didn't give a fuck if the product worked or not. And how long do you take, perfecting, not a spreadsheet, but a website, for example, or an e-commerce product? It's for those of you that are closer to the engineering end of the continuum, it's never ready to go to market. If you were on an assembly line in a car factory, you'd never want the fucking thing to go out because there's always one more thing you can finger fuck with. Well, this is not the model for that. We want, like sometimes you're late to work and you're still putting on your jacket or your shirt and, fucking your shoes are untied and you run into the car. That's this program. Good enough. What else about Steve? Yes, sir.
It's not about who you are, it's about what you create.
Now, the Woz, which was a co-founder, is a mentee of one of my mentees. One of these guys is mentoring the Woz from about 5-6 years ago, and he didn't believe. Well, nobody believes. What do you mean, no money? I get, back 15, 20 years ago, I got so tired of trying to explain. And then I stopped explaining. But what do you mean no money? How can you do that? Saying, Woz is arguably a genius. The fact that he's a mentee at one of my meatheads is a little overwhelming for me, because the meathead that he's a mentee of is a minus intellect. Yet he's a co-founder of one of the great companies. But in one of the films, he goes by and they're deciding on the cap sheet of who's going to get stock when they go public. I don't know if that's the movie that you saw. And he said, well, you don't have to worry about that. None of those guys are getting stock. He had a handshake deal with 15, 20 people that were early in the organization that they all assumed, and he led them to believe that when they went public, had an IPO, or a listing as it's called, that they were going to participate. None of them. Kind of like the handshake deal in McDonald's. There's a trend here. What else about Steve? Yes, sir.
What stood out to me the most was he was making change. So the Apple II was selling and made up 70% of the revenue, but yet he was still wanting to make change. He brought up a new product rather than waiting until that one failed. Well, in marketing, which I'm not a marketing expert, but I'm better than most, is that for the big companies, they have between 10 and 15 derivative products that they will come to market with as the demand wanes. Hit it with another product, hit it with another product. And you never wait until the demand is reduced 80%. You hit the market with a new product and demand goes down 20 or 30%. Then you hit a new product. So and for e-commerce, it's easy to come up with new products. And especially on e-commerce, because the Chinese or whoever can steal your product in 48 hours. They have the same product. If it's any good, they'll have the same product and they'll duplicate it. So to stay one step ahead. But Steve was I saw him in Bangalore, India, at a private club. And he was, the last time I saw him, this was about a year or two after he came to the public and said, he had inoperable cancer, whatever he had, blah, blah, blah. And he was trying all the second and tertiary methods to save himself, as you would, I'm sure, especially if you have money. And he was just dancing on the dance floor by himself with his eyes closed. Like if it was a love story movie, he'd be there with a girl until the band stopped playing and they didn't know the music was playing. They just keep dancing. Well, in his case, he was just dancing with himself. And everybody, and then the band stopped about 1:30, whenever it was. And somebody told him that the band had stopped. And I didn't talk to him. But what else about Steve? Yes, sir.
Don't show your inner emotions. Stay cool, even when called a coward by his daughter.
And you know that he got thrown out of the company he founded, which I can relate to, by the guy that gave him the $84,000 or $80,000 when they started. The fact that the guy that put up the $80,000 only took a third of the company is unusual, because 99% of the time the people that put up all the money take most of the company. And then so he put up the money when they were in a garage or whatever, and then he threw out Steve, and then he's also the guy that helped resurrect Steve to come back to the company. Even ownership, and when you have control, and he didn't have control because he had less than 50%, owners can be tossed out, not owners and founders, the guys that come up with the ideas, contrary to what a lot of people think. What else about Steve? Yes, sir.
He was a ruthless motherfucker. He didn't care about anyone else than himself.
Just like you guys. I said it yesterday, and I said it sometime in the seminar for all seminars. When I was, my most famous talk currently is my talk at the University of Pennsylvania a couple years ago. It's got hundreds of thousands of views online. other than the optics, so the cameraman was a moron, and the cat has now put the slides what they look like because all the slides are above my head. But either it's kind of the standard. I would have thought the Oxford talk was, but it's not. People, I was too refined. I only said fuck twice. It's interesting. The speech that I say, no bad words, hardly gets any views. Oxford, I said fuck twice, and I called a couple of big-titted mothers in hey, cutie pie. It gets no views. What does that tell you? It tells you most people are fakes. Most people are frauds. Why do I use bad words? Because they work. Don't you think after almost 30 years, if they didn't work, I'd stop fucking saying them? Give me some credit. Yet a lot of people, in the old days, people got offended, they just got up and left. We had a person in that room, the seminar, a guy, Hall of Famer, and I said you were going to have trouble. And they brought their 5-month-old kid with a nanny. And the wife left the seminar on the second or third day. It looked like a sitcom with diapers falling out of shit and running to the... we should have made a movie right there. Success leaves clues, kids. And what else about Steve? Yes, sir.
Fear works. At the beginning, when they were launching the new product, the computer didn't want to say hello. So he scared the shit out of his engineer. He told him, I'm going to call you out in front of everybody and your career. And this guy took him 20 minutes to figure it out. It wasn't ethical because they put it on the other computer, but it worked. In crisis, first thing is life.
Unfortunately, fear works. It's not the saying is, it's not a way to run a railroad, and it's certainly should not be a way to run the world. But Mr. Putin is an extraordinary example of fear works, and many of those guys in those former Iron Curtain countries are dictators. Same in South America, dictators. And even though it's a shitty way to run a railroad, it's still around. And one would think with all the goody two-shoes things that we've tried to do the last 70 years since World War II, that hunger would be down and all this shit, right? And it is. We'll show you some stats in a couple of days. We're less starving in the world today than we were 5 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. But we've got people like Greta beating the fucking drum. We've got legions of Gretas standing in front of embassies with placards. But when you look at the numbers, and I believe Bill Gates put these numbers out, which I'm sure everybody will think it was self-serving, just like they think he's getting richer by us getting vaccinated. What are you smoking? What else about Steve? Yes.
Sir, I have a question.
Sure.
The conflict between Steve and John Scully, when Steve was thrown out.
The PepsiCo guy.
Yes, sir. When he was thrown out of the company, that board meeting in the middle of the night, was there any way to avoid that?
Sure, there was.
Because they had different visions.
Well, the truth of the matter is, they had planned that for a year. That just happened when the guy woke up and had to scratch his butt. He just when a guy or a gal leaves his significant other, it's rarely just because they did something right then. It's the Chinese water torture. They did it 50 times and 500 times and 5,000, and then the 50 million times, fuck you, bitch, get out, or I'm leaving. And the same. And when I got thrown out, the beginning of the end for me was when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. And they were 30% shareholders. And I was close to the Kuwaits. I certainly wasn't close to Saddam, but and I should have known that Saddam Hussein, our fucking CIA didn't know they were going to invade. But I should have known, and so when the share price dropped 60, 70%, in fact, the first day when it dropped 25%, I knew that was the beginning of the end. And then when it dropped as much as 80%, somebody had to fall on a sword. And they come up with a different reason. Mine was I was supposedly insider dealing and stealing from the company, which we had a big trial. I told you I could not account for $1,000. But so they come up with a reason. It's like when the politicians or when executives leave their companies or their political positions, they're leaving to spend more time with their family. They're leaving to pursue other interests, philanthropic interests. Bullshit. They just got thrown out. But they come up with a reason. In the public, just like the public knows that down south, the Tories, Boris is fighting for his life and he's lying through his teeth about, in this one man's opinion, he's lying through his teeth. Everybody knows he's lying through his teeth. But they'll come up with another reason. He's not old. His wife is half his age. So I don't know what reason he's going to come up with why he's going to leave, resign. But so far, Steve, he did change the world. There's no question about that. The things that he came up with now, were 20, 30, 40, 50 derivatives beyond that. It's just like, for those of you that have digital watches, you've got more power in your digital watch than when we put a guy on the moon. That's a little tough for me to grasp. But you overanalyze, and you overanalyze because let me back up. 35 years ago, to do a $100 million deal, roughly speaking, the paperwork, 30 to 45 days. If you're using commercial banks, 30 days to 45 days, because now you're Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, so you're not you. So, it's pretty easy to go through credit committees, et cetera, et cetera. When your personal balance sheet is nothing and Goldman Sachs' personal balance sheet is $100 billion, it's easy for them to approve a credit, vis-a-vis, whether you were them. So 45 days to do a $100 million deal. Before computers in the 60s. It takes now 90 to 120 days to do a deal with computers. How is that possible? Because now nobody wants to make a decision. Nobody wants to make a decision. Do we have a challenge? Oh, yeah, the thing I asked for print out. Thank you. Nobody wants to make a decision. Nobody ostensibly wants their career to hang on something, the decision that they made. Thank you. That they made. And that's why we have so many group committee decisions now. Back in the day, we didn't have that. One guy on a desk made a decision. I like that shit. I don't like it. Now we've got 2 or 3 decision-making committees because they want to spread the risk of being wrong. Nobody is worried about spreading the risk of if they're right, but that's because they have no self-confidence. And that's why we've gone away on Wall Street from the partnership concept where everybody had money in the company. Back in the day, Goldman Sachs, all the partners had real money in the company. Bear Stearns, which I came out with, which is now owned by Merrill Lynch, I had real money in the company. Now nobody's got, I used to say, when they say, you got no money in the deal, you got no skin in the game. And I said, well, either do you, prick. What's your fucking skin in the game? Now, I've been telling kids to say that for almost 30 years. I don't know one kid that's ever said it. You got no fucking money in the game. Who are you to sit in judgment of me? You got no money in this goddamn bank. I know nobody's writing this down. For obvious reasons, right? Jesus Christ, if I say that, I might go to jail like that. Other one of Peña's mentees that won't leave the bank without it. But there are people that do it. And you're thinking, how in the fuck does he get away with it? I'm not the only guy that talks like this. My name is so-and-so. I am legally blind, professional accountant. I live in Canada. Shangri-La. No, I'm adding that word, Shangri-La. He's on his 3rd roll-up. Blind. Achieve my goals. Thank you very much. Blah, blah, blah. I have a lot of admiration for people that are blind that can still exist. And then we got you here. Well, you're blind as well. You can see, but you're more disabled than this guy. by a factor of 1,000. And in Canada, where Canada's Shangri-La on Earth, they let anybody fucking in, they don't throw anybody out, and they love one another. And it's not 50% easier, maybe 50% easier to do this in Canada. Okay, but success leaves clues. Jobs was a prick. I hear another movie's coming out where he really shows just how big they call him now eccentric. I used to be a psychopath, and now I'm eccentric. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Did he saw his first daughter as a mistake?
Did he denied that was his kid.
Yeah, because it was a mistake in his case.
No, it's just that when they had whatever the test they had, the blood test, and the DNA is not 100% sure. It's only like 99% or so. There was one chance in 10 million. I forget what the numbers were. That was not his kid, but as far as he was concerned, is if there was any chemical doubt or biological doubt, then he decided not to own up for ownership or fathership of that child, even though I don't forget how long he lived with that girl. And then when he found that's not exactly how it really happened. When she was playing with a computer, and then he saw that she was smart. Is that the movie you saw? Yeah. That's not exactly how it happened, but it's close enough for government work. But when he determined, as I think, if I remember correctly, he had her tested, IQ test. He wasn't interested in the blood test or DNA, and the IQ test came back, she's a genius, off the charts. Then before that, as I recall, I don't think he ever married her, but the woman that was the mother of his child, they lived on relief, on the dole. They starved to death. This is the real world that I come from, not the world that you would like the world to be. And almost all the guys are assholes. I was told 40 years ago I wasn't tough enough by one of the icons. Did you know his name? Because I would not do, there's certain things I won't do. The analogy in those days, Peña won't eat babies. So he'll kill babies, but he won't eat them, which is true. I'm not tough enough. Well, if I'm not tough enough, kids, where does that leave you? Where the fuck are you on the continuum? You're not. I.e., you're here. But even with all the knowledge you're going to garner over this week, unless you pull the trigger, why don't you just send me the money and don't show up? That's the perfect seminar for me. Since only one or two of you are probably going to do this, I mean, do it big time. Just send me the money. I have no bonding with you. Some of you, by tomorrow, will have thought, fuck, I didn't have to have those bilateral tests. I could have just sent them the fucking money. But the one thing you can't ever do, if you're candid with yourself and you're honest with yourself, which most of you aren't, is to say you don't know how to fucking get rich when you leave here. You can't use that bullshit anymore. And the other thing that you don't have to do anymore, read no books, podcasts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Newsletters, whatever. You don't have to do that shit anymore. Because if you don't do this, we're the last town, the world is flat. We're the last town, we're the last saloon, the last bar, and this is the last chair in the last bar before you go off the abyss into the world ending. This is there used to be a movie, Last Chance Saloon, a long, long time ago, I think in the 50s. This is your last chance. This is it. Because you can't say you don't know how to do it. Most of you have said, and the people that you know have said, well, we have no money. We need capital. You don't need any fucking capital. You don't even need to know how to spell capital. whether it's an O or an A. And if you have a little capital, which we're going to talk about the penultimate day, that means the next to last day, it's even easier. I don't recommend or suggest in any way, shape, manner, or form that you use your money. But when you come up and you're 50 grand short, or you're, and it'd be nice to have the property and the 6 dental offices, and you can write a check and put money in, then this thing is just, it's like a pinball machine, which we have in the castle. We don't let you up there anymore because a couple of you have tried to leap off the game room in the castle is locked off. You can't get up. But we have snooker tables and all kinds of modern games and shit like this. But when you pull back the pinball thing and you let it go and the ball goes out and then it bing, 20 points, bing, 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 wherever it hits, it's making points, right? Almost wherever you hit. Well, if you got a little money in this model, it's like that pinball machine and you can never lose. I'm not suggesting that you use that. But in the last seminar, which was hardcore, we had 3 guys that gave me accolades, but they were the 3 guys that made the program. They had done 25 deals between the 3 of them since the primary seminar and the hardcore. 2 of them were Muslim, Asians, and one was a guy from Australia, the asshole of the earth, Adelaide. Anything else about Mr. Jobs? Yes, sir.
Everything came secondary to his vision in his life. Everything and everyone.
For 10 years, almost to the day, I was sequestered, either here or in a hotel room someplace, and it was 100% business, to the exclusion of my wife, my kids, my church, everything, my parents. I focused on one thing. Now, coincidentally, most of my net worth came in those 10 years. What a surprise. What a surprise. It's like Usain Bolt, 10 years, and his workout, and then he changed his workout at the end. And I don't believe there's some kind of theory or myth on the net that takes you 10,000 times to learn something. If you're retarded, it takes you 10,000 times to learn something. Anything else about Mr. Jobs? Yes, sir.
As soon as he came into wealth, people came out of the woodwork with their palms open.
Depending on what story you want to believe, he either attended Oregon, I forget what university, either 3 days or 3 weeks. But it didn't take him long to figure out that they were talking shit. I think maybe he went to Stanford. I forget where he went. But he only went in a few days or a few weeks. And he ascertained that he didn't need that. Not dissimilar to Elon Musk, who attended Stanford grad school for about a week or 4 hours, depending on what story you want to believe. And most of the kids today, the kids that are doing deals and generating wealth with no education, proves that you don't need the education. And some of you, a few of you are multi-degreed engineers. You made it. If you haven't figured out now that you've already made it harder than it needs to be, then, you haven't been awake. Okay, YouTube, thank you.